If I lost everything tomorrow and had to start from zero, most people think I'd panic, but I'd smile because I know something they don't. I'd smile because having $0 with the right understanding beats having $1 million with the wrong one. Let me be clear about something. Starting from nothing in 2026 isn't the disadvantage you think it is. It's actually an edge. Here's why. Most people carrying wealth are also carrying baggage, bad habits, false beliefs, ego protection. They're like hoarders with cluttered houses. They can't see what actually matters because they're too busy protecting what they already have. But zero is a clean slate. Zero forces clarity. When you have nothing to lose, you stop lying to yourself. You stop pretending that your degree matters, that your job title impresses anyone, that your LinkedIn profile is building wealth. You face reality. And reality, actual, unfiltered reality, is the most valuable asset you can own. I built Bridgewater Associates into one of the largest hedge funds in the world. But I didn't build it from capital. I built it from understanding. I built it from a decision-making system that worked with reality instead of against it. Money was just the byproduct. Most people get this backwards. Understand later. That's like trying to win chess before learning how the pieces move. Expensive, exhausting, ultimately futile. Here's what I've observed across decades. People who inherit wealth often protect it poorly. Why? Because they never learned how to create it. They never built the machine. They just inherited the output. And when you don't understand the machine, you can't fix it when it breaks. You can't optimize it. You can't rebuild it if it collapses. You're just a passenger in a car you don't know how to drive. There are two types of people in this world. Those who chase money, and those who understand the machine that produces money. The first group works harder every year and wonders why they're still struggling. The second group works smarter every year and wonders why everyone else is struggling. The difference isn't intelligence. It's not work ethic. It's not even luck. It's understanding. Let me ask you something. What if everything you've been taught about building wealth is backwards? What if get a good job is actually the slow path? What if save 10% of your income is just organized poverty? What if invest in index funds and wait 40 years is the strategy sold to people who'll never be wealthy? I'm not saying those things are wrong. I'm saying they're designed for mediocrity. They're designed to keep you comfortable enough that you don't rebel, but limited enough that you never escape. It's the financial equivalent of a hamster wheel. You're moving, you're sweating, you're tired, but you're not going anywhere. When I started Bridgewater from my apartment, I had almost nothing, but I had principles. I had a method for understanding reality. I had a system for making decisions that other people didn't have. That system was worth more than a trust fund. That system was worth more than a Harvard degree. That system was worth more than every dollar I didn't have, because systems compound, money without a system evaporates. Look at lottery winners. Look at athletes who make millions and die broke. Look at inheritance stories that end in bankruptcy. They had money. They didn't have understanding. And money flows away from people who don't understand it toward people who do. It's not punishment. It's physics. So here's what most people miss. Day one of starting from zero isn't about making money. It's not about side hustles. It's not about grinding 18-hour days. Day one is about something completely different, something nobody talks about. Something that determines whether you'll be wealthy in 5 years or still struggling in 50. And if you don't get this right, everything else is just noise. Explain what I mean. Most people are financially blind. They work, they spend, they hope, they repeat. But they never understand the system they're operating in. They're like players in a game who never learn the rules. And trying to win a game without knowing the rules, that's not ambition. That's just expensive confusion. Here's what I'd do in my first 30 days with $0. Not earn. Learn. Radical, systematic learning. I'd study how money actually flows in the economy. Not the sanitized version they teach in business school, the real version. Where does capital actually accumulate? What creates lasting value versus temporary gains? Where does leverage exist? What patterns repeat across markets, industries, cycles? I dissect the difference between being busy and being productive, between working hard and working smart, between effort and positioning, because here's a truth that will make you uncomfortable. Hard work does not equal wealth, never has. Never will. I know that sounds harsh. I know you've been told the opposite your entire life, but look around. The hardest workers you know, are they the wealthiest? The person breaking their back in construction, working 80-hour weeks, are they building generational wealth? The nurse pulling double shifts, sacrificing sleep and health, are they financially free? No, they're exhausted. They're trading their finite time and energy for fixed dollars. And when the time runs out, the dollars stop. That's not a wealth-building system. That's a survival mechanism. Now compare that to someone who works 20 hours a week but understands positioning. Someone who recognizes where value is created and inserts themselves strategically. Someone who builds systems that work without them. Who wins that game? The answer is obvious. But most people never ask the question. They just accept the programming. Work harder, sacrifice more. Maybe someday you'll make it. That's a lie sold to people who'll never escape. Here's what I learned building Bridgewater. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Most people experience pain and just keep going. They don't stop. They don't reflect. They don't ask, why did this happen? What pattern am I missing? What principle am I violating? They just grind through the pain and hope it gets better. It doesn't, because unreflective repetition of the same mistakes isn't growth. It's insanity with a paycheck. If I'm starting from zero in 2026, I'm not making that mistake. I'm diagnosing my economic machine before I try to run it. I'm asking, what skills do I have that create value? What skills do I need that I don't have? Where is the market moving? What problems are expensive and unsolved? Who has the money and what do they need? These aren't abstract questions. These are surgical questions. And the answers determine everything. Most people stay broke not because they're lazy. They stay broke because they're operating on false principles. They believe effort equals results. They believe credentials equal capability. They believe showing up equals value creation. None of that is true. Results come from understanding reality and aligning your actions with it. Capability comes from solving real problems, not collecting certificates. Value comes from what you produce, not where you stand. In 2026, this matters more than ever. Because AI is eliminating the trade time for money game, automation is swallowing repetitive tasks. The economy is bifurcating into two groups: people who understand how to create value in the new landscape, and people who are becoming obsolete. There's no middle anymore. There's no show up, do your job, get your pension path. That world is dead. So if I'm starting from zero, I need to be in the first group, and that requires a specific skill. A skill that compounds faster than any investment. A skill that can't be automated or outsourced. A skill that turns $0 into opportunity and opportunity into wealth. Most people never develop this skill because they're too busy chasing credentials, promotions, and approval. But this skill is the difference between working for money your whole life and having money work for you. It's the difference between reacting to markets and predicting them. Between hoping things work out and engineering outcomes. And in my first 90 days with nothing, this is the only skill I'd focus on building. The skill is pattern recognition, specifically pattern recognition in markets and human behavior. This is the skill that built my fortune. Finance degrees, not connections, not capital, pattern recognition. The ability to see what's coming before everyone else sees it. The ability to understand why people make the decisions they make. The ability to predict how systems will respond to change. This skill is worth more than any credential you can buy, more than any degree, more than any certification program or online course. Because credentials tell you what happened in the past. Pattern recognition tells you what's coming next. And money flows to people who see the future before it arrives. Here's what I'd do in months 2 and 3. I'd study economic cycles obsessively. How does debt expand and contract? What triggers booms and busts? How do central banks respond to crises? What patterns repeat across decades, centuries, empires? I'd study human psychology. Why do people panic in crashes? Why do they get greedy at tops? What cognitive biases destroy wealth? How does social pressure override logic? I'd study decision-making under uncertainty. How do you act when you don't have complete information? How do you calculate risk versus reward? How do you avoid paralysis and avoid recklessness at the same time? Most people go through life looking in the rearview mirror. They study history and think they're prepared for the future. But history doesn't repeat exactly. It rhymes. And if you can't hear the rhythm, you can't predict the next verse. I'm not trying to memorize what happened. I'm trying to understand why it happened. Because why is portable. Why works in different contexts. Why gives you an edge. Now here's where most people screw this up. They think, okay, I'll learn all this someday, after I'm stable, after I have money. No, that's backwards. You learn this while you're earning. In fact, you structure your earning around your learning. I call this earning to learn. You take jobs not for the salary, not for the title, not for the prestige. You take jobs that give you proximity to how money actually works. Let me give you an example. 2 paths. Path A, get an MBA from a top school. Spend $200,000 in 2 years. Graduate with debt and theoretical knowledge. Path B, take a low-paying job at a private equity firm, a hedge fund, or working directly for a successful entrepreneur. Spend 2 years watching capital decisions up close. Graduate with experience and pattern recognition. Which path builds wealth faster? Everyone picks Path A because it sounds impressive, because it makes your parents proud, because society validates it. But Path B teaches you how the game actually works. Path B puts you in the room where decisions happen. Path B shows you what separates good investments from bad ones, what separates visionary founders from delusional ones, what separates sustainable businesses from hype machines. You can't learn that in the classroom. You learn it by watching, by asking questions, by seeing patterns emerge in real time. Here's the truth about wealth. The wealthy don't follow advice from financial advisors. They become the people who understand the game better than the advisors. They don't outsource their thinking. They sharpen their thinking until it's better than anyone they could hire. That's the psychological barrier most people never cross. Ego. Ego makes you chase status jobs instead of learning rich experiences. Ego makes you care more about your title than your understanding. Ego makes you defensive when reality contradicts your beliefs, and ego keeps you poor. I'd kill my ego in month 1. I'd take the job nobody wants. Back office at a bank where I can see transaction flows. Analyst role at a distressed asset firm where I can see what goes wrong. Assistant to a real estate investor where I can watch deal structures. Operations role at a startup where I can see how businesses scale or collapse. I don't care if it pays minimum wage. I care if it teaches maximum understanding. Because once I understand, I can execute. Once I can execute, I can earn. Once I can earn, I can invest. Once I can invest, I can compound. But it starts with understanding, always. Now, while I'm earning to learn, I'm also building something else. Credibility. Not the fake credibility that comes from degrees and titles, real credibility. The kind that comes from demonstrable understanding, from being able to analyze a business and predict its trajectory, from being able to look at a market and explain the forces at play, from being able to sit across from someone with money and show them something they didn't see. That credibility is currency. It opens doors. It creates opportunities. It turns conversations into partnership. And partnerships turn into equity. Equity turns into ownership. Ownership turns into wealth. But here's the question nobody wants to answer. How do you go from $0 and a learning-rich job to actual capital? How do you turn understanding into your first $10,000? Because $10,000 is the inflection point. Below that, you're surviving. Above that, you're building. Most people never cross that line because they're trying to do it the traditional way. Save a little each month, wait years, hope nothing breaks. That's not a strategy. That's a prayer disguised as a plan. If I'm starting from 0 in 2026, I'm not waiting years to get to $10,000. I'm getting there in months, and I'm doing it without a traditional job, without investors, and without selling my time by the hour. Here's exactly how. I solve expensive problems for people who have money. That's it. That's the entire strategy. Most people think wealth comes from having skills. It doesn't. Wealth comes from deploying skills where they're valued highest. A brilliant surgeon in a remote village with no patients stays poor. An average surgeon in a wealthy city becomes a millionaire. Same skill, different deployment. Same principle applies to everything. You can be the smartest analyst in the world, but if you're analyzing data nobody cares about, you're broke. You can be an incredible writer, but if you're writing content nobody will pay for, you're struggling. You can work 100-hour weeks, but if you're solving cheap problems, you stay cheap. Location matters. Context matters. Who you're solving for matters. Who you're solving for matters. So here's what I do with my growing understanding of markets and business. I'd offer services to people who have capital and problems. Small business owners who need financial analysis but can't afford a full-time CFO. Investors who need market research but don't have the time or team. Entrepreneurs who need operational efficiency consulting but can't justify a big firm. These people have money. They have problems. They'll pay for solutions. And I have time, understanding, and hunger. That's the match. Most people stay trapped in the employee mindset. They think, what job can I get? Instead of, what problem can I solve? That shift in thinking is everything, because jobs pay you for your time, and your time is capped. There are only 24 hours in a day. You can't scale time, but solving problems, that's scale. You solve one problem well, you get a reputation. You get a reputation, you get referrals. You get referrals, you raise your prices. You raise your prices, you get selective. You get selective, you work with better clients. Better clients have bigger problems, bigger problems, bigger problems, pay bigger money. That's the flywheel, but it starts with solving the first problem exceptionally well. Here's where most people fail. They undervalue their knowledge and overprice their time. They think, I'll charge $50 an hour because that sounds fair. No, hourly billing is a trap. It caps your upside and guarantees your exhaustion. Instead, I charge based on value created. If I save a business owner $100,000 through better financial structure, I don't charge $500 for 10 hours of work. I charge $10,000. Or I take a percentage of the savings. Or I negotiate equity if the business has potential, because my work created $100,000 in value. $10,000 is a bargain, but most people can't think this way. They're stuck in the scarcity mindset. What if they say no? What if I'm not worth that much? What if they think I'm greedy? Those thoughts keep you poor. Here's the reality. People with money don't think in hours. They think in outcomes. If you can produce a valuable outcome, they'll pay for it. If you can't, they won't. It's that simple. So I'm not asking, what can I get? I'm asking, what can I solve? That psychological shift changes everything. Now let's talk about the money I'm making from solving these problems. Most people would take their first $10,000 and breathe, buy something nice, celebrate, relax a little. This is where discipline separates wealth builders from wage earners. I'd live on 30% of what I make. Maximum, the other 70%? Invested. Not spent. Not saved in a checking account earning nothing. Invested in assets that compound. I know what you're thinking. Living on 30%? That's extreme? That's unrealistic, is it? Or is spending 90% of what you earn and wondering why you're not wealthy unrealistic? Most people have it backwards. They think lifestyle first, wealth second. They get a raise and immediately upgrade their life. Bigger apartment, nicer car, more expensive dinners. They're on a treadmill, earning more, spending more, going nowhere. I'm playing a different game. I'm living below my means intentionally, because every dollar I don't spend is a soldier I can deploy. Every dollar saved is a dollar that can work for me. And compounding doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the gap between what you earn and what you spend. That gap is where wealth is built. Delayed gratification isn't a sacrifice. It's the toll booth between poverty and wealth. You either pay it now by living simply, or you pay it later by working forever. Your choice. Here's what most people don't understand about compounding. $10,000 doesn't just sit there and magically double. It doubles when you deploy it intelligently. When you invest it in skills that increase your earning power. When you invest it in businesses that generate returns. When you invest it in relationships that create opportunities. When you invest it in asymmetric bets where the upside is massive and the downside is limited, that's intelligent compounding. Not buying index funds and waiting 40 years. Not putting it in a savings account at 2% interest. Not hoping the stock market treats you well. Strategic. calculated. Intelligent deployment, and that requires understanding, which is why I spent months 1 through 3 building that understanding. Because money in the hands of someone who doesn't understand it evaporates. Money in the hands of someone who does, it multiplies. And now here's the critical part. Most people, when they finally have money to invest, make a catastrophic mistake. A mistake that wipes out years of hard work. A mistake I've seen destroy fortunes. And if you don't know what this mistake is, you're going to make it. Guaranteed. The mistake is investing before understanding risk. Let me be blunt. Losing your first capital is the most expensive education you'll ever get, and most people pay that tuition. They work hard to save $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. $50,000, then they don't understand. A hot stock tip. A cryptocurrency everyone's talking about. A business opportunity that sounds too good to be true. And it evaporates. Gone. Not because they were unlucky, because they didn't understand risk. Here's what they don't teach you. Risk isn't volatility. Risk isn't market swing. Risk is permanent loss of capital. Risk is betting on something you don't understand and losing everything. When I built Bridgewater, I didn't build it on big wins. I built it on not losing, on understanding that surviving is more important than winning. Because if you survive long enough, compounding does the winning for you. But you have to survive first. Most people approach investing like gambling. They're looking for the big score, the 10x return, the 10x return, the overnight success. That's not investing. That's hoping. And hope isn't a strategy. Here's my investment philosophy starting from zero. Diversification isn't safety. It's ignorance spread thin. If you own 50 things and don't understand any of them, you're not diversified. You're just confused in multiple directions. But if you own 3 things and understand each one deeply, you're actually protected because understanding lets you see when something's breaking, when to hold, when to fold, when to fold, when to double down. So I'm not diversifying into random assets. I'm building what I call an all-weather approach to zero capital, not spreading money across stocks and bonds, spreading effort across uncorrelated bets. Here's my allocation if I'm starting from nothing. 40% developing high-income skills, skills that command premium, skills that can't be automated, skills that solve expensive problems. Think advanced data analysis, strategic consulting, high-level sales, capital allocation, deal structuring. These aren't jobs. These are capabilities that create leverage. 30% asymmetric business opportunities. Small bets with capped downside and unlimited upside. Consulting that could turn into equity. Service businesses that could scale into products. Partnerships with people smarter than me. Situations where I can lose hours but gain ownership. 20% learning investments. Courses from people who've actually done it. Mentors who charge for access. Books that compress decades into days. Conferences where deals happen. This isn't entertainment. This is strategic knowledge acquisition. 10% calculated market positions, not gambling, not speculation. Calculated bets based on understanding. Small enough that losing doesn't hurt. Big enough that winning matters. This is how you build when you have nothing. Not by chasing returns, by building capabilities and taking intelligent risks. Now here's where conventional wisdom will destroy you. Everyone says, save for retirement, invest in index funds, wait 40 years. That's slave advice. That's what you tell people you want working until they're 65. When you're young, when you have energy, when you have time, build assets that generate income now, not later. Now, skills are assets, relationships are assets, businesses are assets. Knowledge is an asset. These compound faster than any stock portfolio when you're starting from zero because they increase your earning power. They create opportunities. They open doors. A 25-year-old investing $5,000 in an index fund will have maybe $7,000 in 5 years. A 25-year-old investing $5,000 in a skill that doubles their income creates $100,000 plus in additional earnings over those same 5 years. Which bet would you take? The math is obvious. But most people take the safe bet, the comfortable bet, the bet that doesn't require them to change, and they wonder why they're not wealthy at 45. Here's the timeline if I'm starting from zero in 2026. Year 1, Build understanding and earn first $50,000 through solving problems. Live on $15,000. Invest $35,000 in skills, relationships, and small market positions. Year 2. Scale to $150,000 through higher value clients and efficiency. Live on $30,000. Invest $120,000 in business opportunities and strategic positions. Year 3. Build systems that generate $300,000 plus with less personal time. Live on $50,000. Deploy $250,000 into asymmetric opportunities. Year 4. Cross $500,000 in annual value creation. Transition from operator to investor. Year 5. Achieve financial independence. Work becomes optional. Wealth becomes inevitable. That's the path. Not fast, not easy, but certain. If you understand the principles, if you control your psychology, if you play the long game. Most people can't do this, not because they're not smart enough, because they can't delay gratification. They earn $100,000 and spend $95,000. They feel rich for a year and stay poor for a lifetime. Compare that to someone earning $50,000 and spending $20,000. Who's winning? The person with $30,000 to deploy is building wealth. The person with $5,000 left over is treading water. Income doesn't matter. The gap matters. Wealth isn't built in comfort. It's built in discipline. In the space between what you could spend and what you choose to spend. In the difference between impressing people now and becoming impressive later. In the gap between instant gratification and delayed domination. That gap is everything. Here's my final principle. The one that matters more than all the others. Principles beat tactics. Systems beat efforts. Patience beats speed. You can learn every tactic in the world, every growth hack, every shortcut, every life hack. But if you don't have principles guiding your decisions, you'll fail. Because tactics change, markets change, opportunities change, but principles are portable. Principles work in any environment. Principles let you adapt without losing your way. My principles? Truth above comfort, understanding above credentials, long-term above short-term, value creation above value extraction, discipline above emotion. These aren't just words. These are operating instructions, and they work whether you're starting with zero or managing billions. So let me bring this home. If I lost everything and started 2026 with $0, I wouldn't panic. I'd execute. Month 1-3. Build my economic reality map. Learn obsessively. Kill my ego. Take learning rich work. Month 4-6. Solve expensive problems. Charge based on value. Live on 30%. Invest 70%. Month 7-12. Scale my skills. Build credibility. Create asymmetric opportunities. Cross $50,000. Year 2-5. Compound knowledge and capital simultaneously. Build systems. Transition to ownership. Achieve independence. This isn't theory. This is the exact playbook. No shortcuts, no gimmicks, no get-rich-quick nonsense. Just understanding, discipline, and execution. Most people want the magic pill, the secret strategy, the hidden loophole. There isn't one. There's only this. Know what you're doing, do it better than others, and don't stop until you win. That's it. That's the whole game. And in 2026, with $0 in my pocket and everything I know in my head, I'm not starting from nothing. I'm starting from everything that matters. Because money comes and goes. Understanding stays. And understanding applied with discipline over time becomes inevitable wealth. This isn't a get-rich-quick plan. This is a get-rich-certain plan. And if you actually do this, if you build the understanding, develop the skills, solve real problems, live below your means, invest intelligently, and play the long game, you won't just build wealth. You'll build the kind of wealth that can't be taken from you. Because it's not in your bank account, it's in your head, and nobody can tax that. Nobody can steal that. Nobody can crash that. That's the wealth that lasts. That's the wealth worth building. And that's exactly what I'd do if I started over today.